Our next speaker has also been involved in the IDGs from the beginning on as an academic advisor. And similar to the IDGs spanning over several dimensions, she's always worked over several disciplines. She's a researcher and a teacher on leadership and sustainability at the Stockholm School of Economics. But on the other hand, she also teaches art, and she's worked in media as a TV host. And the combo of that is reflected in her role as the Director of Research, Center for Arts, Business and Culture at the Stockholm School of Economics. So it's no surprise that switching contexts or stepping into seemingly opposing fields has become part of her core competence, and she has translated it into a method called bubble hopping. Today, she's gonna make you first realize, and then maybe also invite you to hop out of your own bubbles. Please welcome Emma Stenström.
Thank you, Katarina. What did you say in the beginning? Did you say something about that zone in between panic and comfort? I think I'm leaning a bit towards panic right now, I have to admit. But that can happen when you bubble hop as well. It is about stepping out of your comfort zone. It's sometimes about feeling a bit, maybe not panic, but at least some nervousness. And it's okay. We can still do it. So here we go. I want you to think about someone who has a very different viewpoint than you. Think about a person. It doesn't have to be somebody you know, but a concrete person. Think about that person now. Maybe there is somebody here, but otherwise, what would you do if you met that person right now? Would you turn away? I see some people nodding. Would you perhaps try to change their mind? I see some people nodding there too. Or would you approach them with curiosity? Lean forward and think about, what can I learn from you? Those are the three options. I personally find it difficult sometimes to lean forward and learn from somebody with a different viewpoint. I noticed last night, and I know everybody's here, I was at a dinner, and there was somebody at my table who had a quite different viewpoint on the IDGs than I do. And then there was somebody who had a pretty similar one as I do. What do you think I did? I leaned towards the person who had the same viewpoint. I was like, oh, so nice, bonding, I feel at home. And that's very, very typical. I think, this is my theory, and I'm not sure it's true, but I think that all of us who teach things or preachers, we tend to be a bit bad at what we are teaching and preaching. And I think that's one of the reasons for why I got engaged in bubble hopping. I'm not so good at it myself. I can learn. I need to push myself sometimes. Oops. Here goes all the slides too. So, the Persian poet Rumi said that out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. To me, that is bubble hopping. It's really going into that field, leaning forward into that in-between space between your and somebody else's perspective. And sometimes it might be about the IDGs, like the last night. And other times it might be about Middle East or abortion? Can you still lean forward? Can you still be curious? So, bubble popping, of course, covers many of the dimensions and skills. But to make it a bit simplified, I put it today in the thinking category and about perspective skills. Not only because I love the color of pink, but that's also part of it. And we know that we think best together. Some cognitive scientists would even say that the reasons for why we as individuals have cognitive biases is that we were never meant to think alone. We're always meant to think together. However, and now it might be stopping the popping here, perhaps we are not meant to think together with people unlike us. Whether we like it or not, we tend to be quite drawn into those bubbles. We tend to lean towards the people that are more like us. And I call them bubbles. You could call them something else. There are many, many, many concepts, really. And those bubbles, they are wonderful. They're wonderful. They're warm and cozy. You feel at home. You feel belonging. You don't always want to step out of them. And that's okay. That's okay. We need the bubbles. But we also need the bridging between bubbles. And that's what bubble hopping is about. Is IDG a bubble? Raise your hand. Almost everyone raised their hand, not everyone, but I have a bit harder time to see you up there, but so I guess you have to wave more up on the... So many people thought IDG is a bubble. That's interesting. There's, of course, a lot of research on bubbles, lots in different disciplines, and we know that they influence us. They influence our behaviors, our values, our taste, our smell, everything, really. So when I do bubble hopping, I usually start with, let's exploring our bubbles a little bit. So we'll do that through a very simple exercise today. And it's simple. And I want you to think of another bubble than IDG that you belong to. And that you don't mind sharing. You might belong to some bubbles you don't want to talk to a stranger about. And also think about the clues that you could give about that bubble. You're not allowed to name it. We already practiced this a bit this morning, but you're only supposed to give some hints. You could use a word or so. Perhaps there's a common language in your bubble. And also gestures, body language, whatever you want. It's going to be a guessing game. So what clues will you use for one of your bubbles? And I'll give you one example. So for me, for example, I would not pick the business school bubble because you already seen that I work at a business school. I pick something a little bit less obvious. I would pick burlesque. And of course, I wouldn't say so. But then I would show it. Now it's fairly easy with burlesque, I have to say, but I'll show some bumping. I might do a little bit of shimming. I might even say shimmy. And as you all have noticed, I am not a burlesque dancer. But the burlesque bubble really influenced me at a certain point of time. It taught me a different worldview, a worldview where we don't have necessarily one core, but many alter egos. And it also taught me that you can approach something like feminism or inner development in a playful, embodied, and empowered way. You don't always have to be so serious. So it was an important bubble. Now, it's your turn. Turn to somebody you don't know. And if you're online, you can grab someone you don't know. That's bubble hopping for real. Or you can do it later. And now you are going to guess your bubbles. I'll just give you 30 seconds. One shows. The other one can ask some questions. Guess. Are we showing? Just show some. One shows, the other one tries to guess. And then it's time to switch. Switch roles. Time is up. Time to debrief a little bit. Just debrief. What happened? What did you learn? Okay, time is up. Here I should have a little bell. Is it possible? Lovely. I always say that I've told many people, and if I tell all of you, it might be a better chance, that on my funeral, I really want to have the sound of people talking to each other like this. That's really what I would love to play at my own funeral. It's beautiful, the sound. It's also really fun. It was fun to watch some of your movements. I couldn't guess all the bubbles, but it's also important to remember, I think we're in the thinking dimension, but of course, we think with our bodies, our gestures, our voices. We not only think with our brains or something like that. So, we all belong to multiple bubbles. I mean, we talked about, many of you raised your hands, said you belong to the IDG bubble, and then I think you did actually try to visualize some other bubble. And that's important to remember. Everyone belongs to multiple bubbles. Be careful to put someone in just one bubble. Bubbles are also fun because dynamic and fluid, and they can change, and you can hop, and they can pop. And I think that's really important with bubbles. So this started as an educational project at the business school. I wanted my business school students to kind of get out of that business school bubble and get broader perspectives. So what we did, and I say we because of course there were several of us working together with this, we actually pushed 900 students to do it. We tested different research-based skills. There is lots of research here. And then we collected and very systematically analyzed their experiences. And from there we came up with the idea, putting it together as a very adaptable, but also kind of fun, playful method for bridging or bubble hopping, as we like to call it. I turned it into a book, and in Swedish, unfortunately, so you won't be able to read it. Doesn't really matter. My publisher hates me for saying that, but it really doesn't. Honestly, one thing that's very important to remember is that now we're talking bubble hopping, but there are so many similar initiatives and methods. And I am sure many of you are already working with some. So this is nothing unique. It's just one of many. The important thing is to do it, not what book you read or what method you follow. Today, I don't do so much just with students anymore. We've done it with about 4,000 students by now. But I do a lot within organizations and between organizations. So, for example, I will have business leaders meet with local community leaders and learn about leadership, but also what they can do together. So that would be the typical. And I always start the same way. I always start with having theories. I've realized, and I saw, some of you thought it was too scientific here, but I must say, one of my experiences is that sometimes, and for some people, that's like fact and science-based foundation is very important. And there's lots of research, as I said, lots of it here. And you can pick up sociologists like Hartmut Rosa and his concept of resonance, or Michel Lamont, who talks about recognition and shared stories, or John A. Powell, who's just coming out in December with a book, The Power of Bridging, and many, many others. I find it important to have that fact and science-based foundation. And then what we do is that we practice skills. Many skills, of course, that's why it's adaptable. And we put this as mandatory classes for all our students, both at the bachelor and master level and executives. Not mandatory for all the executives, but we do it usually in connection with sustainability, social sustainability. Just to let you know, like the context a little bit. And then we practice lots of skills. So a typical skill would be we practice this conversation triangle. I really like it myself. Useful, I think. Now, how do we balance in a conversation between asking questions, listening, and also sharing? My experience is that we tend, perhaps, many of us at least, to have an anchor in one of these three, and perhaps a little bit more wobbly side in another, and that's where we can develop. Ask your friends if you don't know where you need to develop. For example, I'm not so good at asking questions. I really need to work on that, but I'm pretty good at sharing. Sometimes oversharing, but that's another story. What about you? Can we just raise your hand? How many has, and you can only pick one, how many has an anchor in asking questions? That's not me. But the third, I'm guessing. What about listening? And you can only raise it once, huh? And sharing. It's a good mix here. You might not see it, all of you, but it seems like it's a third in each, so we do have things to learn from each other. You can start bubble hopping here, and I really invite you to do so. Do it at the summit, Lean forward. If somebody says something about inner development, you don't agree. Don't be like me. Lean forward instead. I always say to my students or participants that, 3 things you could bring with you. Remember, it's a conversation, not a debate. It's about understanding and making yourself understood. Always look for common ground. That's so now proven in science that small interventions can help, especially if you always look for common ground. And finally, of course, cultivate that curiosity. Lean forward into those conversations. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Emma, for leaning into that conversation with us. And I'm wondering, after all this bubble hopping, I'm not entirely sure about this one, but I wonder if we should try an experiment as well and bubble hop between speaker and moderator, and you ask me a question.
And did you hear what I said? I just said I'm bad at asking questions. That's my wobbly side.
No, in this area of the stage, the audio's bad, so I did not hear that.
No, but I'll try, because I have the chance now. And I don't know about you, but I feel like when I see you on stage, I really want to know the secrets. Huh? Because you are really managing, I think, to connect with so many people. Even when you're on a stage. So can you please give me your 3 best tips for doing so? And all of us? Don't we all want them? Kat, please, your 3 best tips for connecting with the audience.
Wow.
This is not rehearsed, by the way.
Exactly. I know why I'm rather on this side of this conversation. Best tips to connect with the audience. I'm almost tempted to ask you. I think first starts with connecting with yourself. So being present with myself, my insecurities, and what I want to go for.
Do you have any tricks? Sorry, now. Do you have any tricks? Do you do before you?
I should have briefed you. This is supposed to be like 30 seconds to 1 minute. You come up with a question like this. Can we just agree on presence? Being present with myself.
Big
being
words,
present with
the house. What's the third one?
Being present amongst each other. Being present with yourself between the speaker and the audience. And I have to send you off stage now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Emma Stenström.